We're moving on to the Max Blumenthal story. Of course, Max Blumenthal has found himself in situations to confront the State Department officials, or actually the ones that they push in front to take all the questions. And a lot of times they don't even want to answer the questions that you're asking. But I want to show you two different clips because a similar question, right? So the first question actually is to Anthony Blinken. Why is it that the U.S. government has a different version of definition of genocide when it comes to the Uyghurs in China versus when it comes to the Palestinian people in Gaza? So first, we're going to see Anthony Blinken's response to that. And he's very nervous in this video. And then we're going to dive into Max Blumenthal also asking a similar question to the State Department. I think this is a great comparison to make here. We'll have to remember with the Uyghurs, the U.S. government claimed that China had committed genocide against the Uyghur people. However, the State Department in China had confirmed that they actually could not prove that happened. They said they had no evidence that they committed genocide against the Uyghurs. Aaron Mate also covered this story a while back. And he explained that there was no evidence. You can Google this yourself and see it also, that there was no evidence about this, right? However, what's happening to the Palestinian people in Gaza is happening right in front of our eyes. The whole world is able to see this, and the U.S. has a different response. So let's see how Anthony Blinken responds first, and then we'll get into the State Department official.
Mr. Secretary, the topic of genocide has been debated during this trip. I was wondering if you could give us a better sense of what you think about the topic. One of your first major remarks as Secretary of State was accusing Beijing of genocide. Why do you think China's treatment of the Uyghurs constitutes this crime and Israel's treatment of Palestinians does not? Also, any reaction to Netanyahu's post-war plan for Gaza calls for the establishment of a buffer zone inside Gaza and seems to contradict some of the principles that were laid out in Tokyo. And then finally, any response to Israel's latest purported plans for settlement expansion?
John, thank you very much. Let me make sure I cover everything that you raised. Look, on the genocide question, I think we've been very clear over many months and now many years about the Uyghurs, about Rohingya, and others. And we've laid out in some detail. In fact, I had the opportunity to lay out some detail when it came to the Rohingya exactly why we see the genocide being perpetrated. Similarly, including very recently before the International Court, we had an opportunity, and others have had an opportunity to make clear why that is simply not the case when it comes to Gaza.
Notice how he seems to be stuttering, or not really stuttering, but stammering a little bit over his words. He seems to look a little bit uncertain and unsure. And he said that they laid out in detail what happened to the Uyghur people. If it was laid out in detail, you wouldn't need to explain it again. You wouldn't constantly be asked about this to explain it again. So I'll go ahead and tell you why they're doing what they're doing. The reason why they are quick to condemn what China has done, but not what Israel has done, is because the United States government is in bed with the Israeli lobby. They're not in bed with the Chinese lobby. So if you follow the money, you will see why. A lot of the politicians are bought. A lot of the politicians in Congress are in bed with the Israeli lobby. That's who they answer to instead of answering to you or me, their constituents. However, when it comes to China, they're looking for any little thing to go after China, just like they're looking for anything to go after Russia. These are countries that they see as a competitor to the United States. When you look at the financials, it does not lie. When you look at the economics, it does not lie. China has grown immensely, I would say, in the past decade, and is miles ahead of the United States when we talk about technology. They are miles ahead of us. They are ahead of us in the banking industry because they have most of the banks in the top 10. When you talk about Russia, they are also miles ahead of us when we talk about infrastructure, when we talk about public transportation, If you go to some of these other countries, you'll see their systems run a lot more smoothly. You know, my dad was stationed in South Korea. He showed us pictures of the public transit system in South Korea when he came back, just how clean and fast and nice and sleek it is. Not like what we have here in the United States. These countries are seen as an economic competitor to the United States, and that is why the U.S. goes after them. Even if they have to start a coup, they'll do whatever they can to try to stop these competitors. However, when it comes to Israel, Israel has basically become an extension of the United States. You can say that the United Kingdom is like our spouse. No, we'll put that down. You can say the United Kingdom is like a sibling, and Israel is our spouse. And Israel is the one that's the breadwinner. They're the ones that control a lot of what's happening politically in this country because of the Israeli lobby. This is exactly what JFK was afraid of. This is why he did not want Zionism to spread. This is why he didn't feel comfortable about Israel having nuclear weapons. But he's not going to tell you that.
And we've been very clear about the meritless nature of that particular charge. So I'm not going to rehearse the details here, but I think the record is very clear on that. Setting that aside, as you know, as we've spoken extensively about, we are determined to see the conflict in Gaza end as soon as possible in a way that ensures that October 7th can never happen again, but also that the suffering that Palestinians have endured doesn't happen again.
So let me go ahead and contradict something here. He says the suffering of the Palestinians doesn't happen again, but that started back in 1947. But Anthony Blinken is pretending like that just started now. It's been happening. You can't have it both ways. I want to be clear, people. You cannot have it both ways. You can't say Israel has a right to defend itself, and at the same time, you sit here saying, well, the Palestinian people, you know, they shouldn't have to endure the suffering. As long as you're arming Israel, the Palestinian people are going to suffer. We talked about this yesterday at the RBN Boston chapter meeting. These phrases, the Zionist phrases that are thrown your way and how you effectively respond to them. I'm working on a project about that because I think it's really important that you know how to take down these points, because it's the same points made over and over. So if someone tells you that Israel has a right to defend itself, you need to ask them, why is it that Gaza doesn't have a right to defend itself? The Palestinian people don't have an army. So you have one pocket called Gaza that is not allowed to defend themselves. And you're allowing their oppressor to have the weapons to defend themselves. What do you think is going to happen to the people who are being oppressed? Craziest shit I've ever heard.
In the first instance, we're focused on getting the hostages out, getting an extended humanitarian ceasefire, and building on that, even as we look toward the longer term and getting on a genuinely durable path to lasting peace and security for everyone concerned. With regard to the post-war Gaza plan that you referred to, look, I've seen the reports. I haven't actually seen the plan, so I want to reserve judgment until we actually see the details.
This is something they continue to do. All of a sudden, whenever you try to point out something that Israel is doing that is in the wrong, they always say they haven't seen it or they haven't had a chance to look at the details. He's seen it. Anybody on social media that's been following this has seen it. That's just one of the talking points that they give because they don't want to hold Israel responsible, particularly to the press. They don't want to hold Israel accountable. So they'll just say they haven't seen it.
Having said that, you know that there are certain basic principles that we set out many months ago that we feel are very important when it comes to Gaza's future, including that it cannot be a platform for terrorism. There should be no Israeli reoccupation of Gaza. The size of Gaza's territory should not be reduced. So we want to make sure that any plan that emerges is consistent with those principles. There are other principles, but those are three of the most important ones. At the same time, we have many countries in the region that are working together on a plan for post-conflict Gaza. I think that's very important, and I spent some time with some of our Arab partners, including recently on the margins of the G20, talking about that, just as we did when we were at the Munich Security Conference together.
So unless you stop Israel, none of those things matter. Israel is ignoring international law. They're ignoring the ICJ demands, International Court of Justice. Israel is doing whatever they want to do. So it doesn't matter what plan you came up with other Arab countries. As long as Israel is the one that is in power, the Palestinian people are not safe. Period. And you come up with all these plans and you sit down with all these world leaders. But this isn't just about Gaza, because in the meantime, Israel is still removing Palestinian people from their homes in the West Bank. So if they were serious about these plans and what Israel must do, they would stop the settlements in the West Bank from continuing. The U.S. hasn't done that. The UN has not done that. So we always have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, it is not just about Gaza. We cannot forget about the settlements, the ongoing settlements in the West Bank that continues.
It's important that we have, again, a plan which is absolutely necessary, but one also that's consistent with basic principles that I think many countries share about what has to be Gaza's future. Finally, I think you referred to the settlements. Well, look, we just saw another horrific terrorist attack, this in Mal Adumin. And my first thought is with the victims of that attack. And we will continue, to fully support Israel's right to security.
Do you see what I'm saying? You see, he tries to both sides. And I want to be very clear here. First of all, Antony Blinken, I sincerely hope you do not play poker. And if you do, I'm guessing you always lose. Dude does not have poker face. Okay? It is very obvious what is happening here. Antony Blinken is controlled. Joe Biden is controlled. Congress is controlled. All of these people are controlled by the Israeli lobby. You cannot sit here and say that we are upset about the settlements in the West Bank and we feel sorry for the victims. And then you turn around at the same time and you say that Israel security is important. Who is being displaced? The Palestinian people are. So when we talk about security, you need to be concerned about the security of the Palestinian people. Israel is secure. Israel has the Iron Dome, which the U.S. funds. Israel has weapons given to them by the United States. Israel gets $3.8 billion a year from the U.S. government. Israel is secure. So for me, it's just, you can't sit here and say you feel sorry for the victims. You don't feel sorry for those damn victims. Antony Blinken say, fuck them kids. You can't even look people in the eye anymore. That's why you got your head hanging down. All these people are bought. All these people are bought. It's such a hot mess.
To self-defense and to dealing with terrorism. On settlements, we've seen the reports, and I have to say we're disappointed in the announcement.
We are disappointed when it comes to the settlements, you guys. They're just they're disappointed. I want people to stop saying this right to defend yourself only applies to Israel, because it does not. It should not. And people like Antony Blinken are part of the problem. They have the right to security. They have the right to defend themselves. You don't hear them say this about any other group of people or state in the world. In the world. It's just, think about it. especially in the United States. Those of you, if you're African American in this country, you'll never hear them say you got a right to defend yourself. You'll never hear it. Never. But when it comes to Israel, they got a right to defend themselves. They got the right to security. Nobody else is given this much leeway in the world.
It's been long-standing U.S. policy under Republican and Democratic administrations alike that new settlements are counterproductive to reaching an enduring peace. They're also inconsistent with international law. Our administration maintains a firm opposition to settlement expansion. And in our judgment, this only weakens, doesn't strengthen Israel's security.
So Max Blumenthal is going to ask a similar question, this time to the State Department. Because people need to hear this. Because the mask is off, ladies and gentlemen. They always bring this guy up here. You guys notice how, with the exception of Antony Blinken, most of the time they actually have someone who's a person of color to deliver the bad news. They put them out in the front, right? Let's go on.
And in March 2021, Secretary Blinken accused China of the crime of genocide for its alleged treatment of the Uyghur minority, but he didn't accuse them of killing on any mass scale or forcible transfer. Now we see with Israel's military assault on Gaza, something like every 200 people in the Gaza Strip has been eliminated. Over 4,000 children killed. The Ministry of Intelligence, as Sam pointed out, in Israel has published a blueprint for the forced transfer of the entire Palestinian population to Egypt. We have the intent to commit genocide expressed at the highest level of the Israeli government, including Netanyahu himself referring to the Palestinian population as Amalek, the biblical Amalek. So I wonder, when you're accusing one country of genocide without accusing them of mass killing, and then blocking ceasefires to enable another country's military assault, what metric are you using to determine genocide, or is this just political rhetoric?
It's certainly.
Pause here for a second. What metric are you using to determine genocide? So let's remember that is the question. And one thing I want to point out that Margaret Kimberly said so beautifully, which was, it's not about a person's individual definition of genocide. It's about the definition of genocide under international law. So keep that in mind when you hear his response. Listen to this.
Not political rhetoric. The department, and I talked a little bit about this yesterday, we have a rigorous process in place for evaluating whether something constitutes as genocide or not. And that.
Pause right here. So you heard what I just told you, right? So you see he's already lying. It applies to the definition of genocide under international law. And he is telling you they have a rigorous process to decide if something is genocide or not. What process? What did the ICJ demand that Israel do? They demanded that Israel try to do whatever they can to preserve civilian casualty and prevent genocide of the Palestinian people. What rigorous process?
That is true in any country that that situation might be being looked at. That is not a term that we have assessed pertains to this current conflict. We are, of course, monitoring the evolving situation and are examining facts as they develop. This continues to be an incredibly challenging and fraught situation, but it's all.
Pause. So I'm going to show you some of the talking points that they use over and over again when it's a controversial subject and they don't want to tell you the truth. Okay. So one of the things that he said, he mentioned the rigorous process, right? Then he said we have to examine information. Okay. This has been going on for months. When they say, a lot of times when they tell you they have to examine the information that is coming in, they've already seen the information. The information has already been examined. That's just a talking point that they give you to continue to stall what is happening. they continue to stall actually making any type of a decision on their end. That's one of those tactics that they use. It's no different from when your representatives tell you, yes, we looked at that bill and that bill is actually sent to a study. Oftentimes there's no actual study happening with the damn bill. That's just a place where bills go to die. They ain't studying that damn bill. Half the times you've seen how these representatives will just sign a 4,000-page bill and they didn't even read half of it. So they're going to tell you ain't no damn study. So when he sits up here and he tells you we just have to examine the information, how many times has this guy said this? They've already examined the information, guys. This is a stonewall tactic. So keep that in mind. And then this piece that he said here, one second.
Examining facts as they develop. This continues to be an incredibly challenging and fraught situation, but it's also
challenging. That's the other thing they'll add. They'll tell you that it's challenging, it's complex, it's complicated. Again, those are just words that they use to continue to delay doing what they're supposed to do, which is calling for the ceasefire and stop aiding Israel.
Important to remember that Hamas bears responsibility for sparking this war. They have brought this project war to Gaza.
Okay, well,
Okay. And so then what do? They bring it back to it all started on October 7th. This is why I told you earlier tonight, it's important to know about the history so that you understand why Hamas even formed in the first damn place. So people have to understand that. So now it's like, let's draw your attention back onto Hamas. Okay, so because of Hamas, that gives Israel the right to destroy an entire population of people? Under international law, no. Under the Geneva Convention, no. According to the ICJ, no. So Max comes in with more questions here.
They have brought this project war to Gaza.
Okay, well, President Biden has accused the Russian government of genocide for its actions in Ukraine, where in 2 years it has killed as many civilians as Israel has killed in 1 month in the Gaza Strip. So how do you account for that disparity where you're assisting one country and accusing the other of genocide when the country you're assisting has systematically killed so many more people in 1 month?
Those circumstances are totally and completely not the same. And to make a comparison,
they're totally and completely not the same. You know why they're totally and completely not the same? Because one country is Russia and the US government, the US politicians are not in bed with the Russian lobby. And the other one is Israel, and they are in bed with the Israeli lobby. That's the two different thing there. Okay. It's the damn country, people. Don't listen to this guy. It's the damn country. It's Russia bad, China bad. Israel has a right to defend itself. Someone should make a t-shirt that says that. The US says Russia bad, China bad, but Israel has a right to defend itself.
That candidly is incredibly inappropriate. We have been, please don't interrupt me. We have been, we have raised directly with the Israeli government about the need to distinguish between Hamas terrorists and Palestinian civilians. This is something that the secretary has raised directly on his travels. We even laid out.
See, he's getting nervous too. We've told them to distinguish between Hamas and the civilians. Okay. So you see these talking points that they give? They've seen the same videos that you and I have seen on social media, guys. They know what Israel is doing. This guy standing here with these glasses on knows what Israel is doing. All these people are puppets. All these people are puppets. They know damn well, I would love to be a fly on that wall behind closed doors. Love to be a fly on that wall. You said it, outside Steelers fan. Why am I paying taxes again? That's a good damn question. That is a good damn question. Because I don't know about you guys, but I didn't ask for my tax dollars, or we call them federal dollars, to go to Israel. Something to think about there.
Out that we believe that there are commitments that can be made additionally on dealing with protecting civilian life more effectively. And we're watching very closely to make sure that happens.
But you referred to Palestinians.
Now, let me go ahead and point out the gotcha. Now, earlier he told you they have to examine the information. But just now, he told you they are watching very closely to make sure that happens. But I thought you had to examine the information. What'd I tell you guys? What'd I tell you? They tell on themselves. You just got to listen closely and you'll see that they tell on themselves. What is there you need to examine if you're telling us that you're watching the situation very closely? And if you're watching the situation very closely, that means you know exactly what is happening to those people. I can't. And Max comes in with a follow-up question here as well.
But you referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. Doesn't that blur the distinction between civilians and militants?
We have not referred to Palestinian civilians as human shields. We have
heard Matthew Miller refer to them as human shields.
We have said that Hamas is using Palestinian civilians as human shields. That is not hyperbole. That is something that we have seen Hamas do as they continue to integrate themselves into key civilian infrastructure across Gaza.
Wouldn't that be?
Wait, you've actually seen them do this? But I thought you had to examine the information. I thought you needed more details.
Blurring the distinction between civilians and combatants. If you say Hamas is using civilians as human shields, wouldn't that be in some ways justifying the killing of civilians because they happen to be in the way, in their homes?
There is no one in this administration that is justifying killing of civilians. Any civilian life loss is incredibly troubling, heartbreaking to us. Any number above 0 is deeply troubling to us. What we are doing is we are working with our Israeli partners to ensure that steps can be taken to minimize the impact on civilian life.
But I thought you had to examine it. If Israel was not in the wrong, and if they're not committing a genocide against the Palestinian people, why do you need to work with them to minimize the impact against Palestinian lives? I thought you have to examine this information. They sent fake Sagar in to do the job. They send this guy in to do the job. Like, I don't know how these people go to sleep at night. I really don't.
Incredibly troubling, heartbreaking to us. Any number above 0 is deeply troubling to us. What we are doing is we are working with our Israeli partners to ensure that steps can be taken to minimize the impact on civilian life. And we also have believed that there is a moral imperative, there is a strategic imperative to take steps to minimize loss of civilian life. I'm going to work through them. I've answered like 4 of your questions. You could.
Strategic imperative, right? Strategic imperative. Let me show you something, guys. Here's an Israeli actress. I want you to hear what she says about Palestinian people, because here's the thing. Like I told you, the same way I've seen these videos, they've seen these videos as well. The State Department knows exactly what Israel is doing. Listen to how this woman refers to Palestinian people.
צופית, עכשיו ברצינות נושא החטופים ממש בוער בך.
זה בוער בי כמו שזה בוער בכולם, זה מצריף אותי, זה מצמית אותי, זה נורא, פשוט נורא בעיניי. אבל אני נורא מעריכה את זה, שהצליחו להחזיר את מה שהחזירו בחודש וחצי, זה לא מובן מאליו הדבר הזה. זה באמת לא מובן מאליו.
ברור, אני חושב שאנשים מתבלבלים, אנחנו בסוף מתעסקים עם מחבלים.
See this? After all, we're dealing with terrorist devils. Listen to this.
שטן.
עם חלאות המין האנושי.
With the scum of the earth, for God's sakes. Liars, whiners. You see what how they talk about them? This is how they see the Palestinian people. The scum of the earth.
אלוהים ישמור.
בכיינים. זה פשוט
מגעילים,
מדהים.
לוזרים, מסריחים.
Disgusting, stanky losers. They walk with flip-flops, repulsive. The fuck is wrong with wearing flip-flops? You see this? not just Islamophobic, not just racist, but also elitist. This is how they feel about them.
עם כפכפים, באים דוחים, באמת, אשכרה דוחים.
Really repulsive people.
בהחלט,
אין
אני
שום
מסכים איתך.
דבר אנושי.
You hear him? Definitely, I agree. She said there's nothing human about it. You see how they refer to them as animals?
בדבר הזה. מדהים, אבל איך העולם כאילו מצליח לא לראות את זה.
איך את מסבירה את זה? כאילו מה, אנשים אינטליגנטים.
It's amazing the world is not able to see it, intelligent people in the world, because we see right through you, because we see the same thing that you claim that the Palestinian people are doing. Usually Israel is doing those things. It's you doing those things.
נמצאים בעולם.
אני לא יודעת להסביר את זה, אני רק יכולה להסביר לך שאני חושבת שכל המדינה וכל, בכלל, לא יודעת אם כולם, לא אדבר בהכללה, אני אדבר עליי, אבל הזעזוע והשינוי המטורף, אני ב7 באוקטובר, גם לי רצחו משהו, רצחו איזה חלק הומניטרי במוח, חמלה שהיא גורפת כזאת, כולנו בני אדם.
Yeah, she definitely an actress.
לא. אנשים הם פרי החינוך שהם גדלים עליו, ואם מגדלים אותך כמו שרת.
People are the fruit of the education they're raised on, and if they raise you like a vermin, that's what you become. You see how she referring to the Palestinian people as rodents? How is this any different to the way that Black people have been treated? How is this any different?
זה מה שאתה נהיה, שרץ ביבים.
A gutter vermin, she said.
אנס מגעיל.
Here we go with the disgusting, like rapist thing, a human that is filth, son of filth. Again, where are pedophiles hiding out in again? Israel.
בן אדם תינופת בן תינופת. נהיה לי משהו כל כך קשה. החלק השמאלני שלי, so called.
הוא עוד קיים?
לא. הוא קיים בדברים אחרים, אני בן אדם הומני, אבל לא, הוא לא.
So she's saying the leftist side of her, it's hard to reckon with, I guess.
הוא לא קיים ככה, ועוד יותר מעצבנים אותי, אני אהיה ירי, מה שנקרא. אלה שעוד מחזיקים בזה בכוח.
כן, אני חייב לציין שאני רואה כרגע את השלטים ואת ההפגנות של אנשים
I see the signs and demonstrations of people in support of Gaza.
בעזה עכשיו, ברגעים אלה, זה מוציא אותי.
לא, זה באמת זה מעצבן.
She said, no, it really annoys me. See, what you have that has been established is another form of supremacy. And this time, the supremacy is not with Nazi Germany, it's with Israel.
זה גם לא רגיש. אתה יודע, אחד הדברים שכן קראו לי.
Bringing it back to October 7th. You know, one of the things that did happen to me on October 7th. See, this is all, man, the propaganda is so deep.
מה7 באוקטובר, בא לי כל היום ללכת ברחוב ולנשק ישראלים. נהייתי מאוד, מאוד, מאוד ישראלית, ועוד יותר יהודייה.
פתאום מרגישים את האיחוד הזה, את כולנו יהודים, כולנו...
She said after October 7th, suddenly we feel this unity.
כולנו ישראלים נלחמים ביחד.
גם לא בא לי לנסוע לשום מקום.
She said, I don't feel like traveling anywhere except for work. I don't feel like it.
לעבודה, לא בא לי. בא לי להיות פה, אני כל היום בזירות.
I feel like being here. I'm in various places of events every day.
אני כל היום מסתובבת בזירות, ואני מגיעה לעזה, ואני מגיעה...
Walking around places every day, and I get to Gaza, and I get to this, and I get to that.
אני מגיעה לכל המקומות, אני כל היום בעשייה.
I get to all places. I'm working every day. That's exactly how they feel. That's, and by the way, it's not everybody, right? It's not everyone in Israel. And some people have been like speaking up and trying to fight back. There are people protesting in Tel Aviv as well, talking about bring the hostages back. We want to talk about the hostages. Hamas offered a ceasefire again to exchange the hostages. And Netanyahu said, no, it was never about the hostages. I've been saying that from day one. Let me get to some of these comments here, but it's wild. And it's crazy. But for those of you who have not seen the tweet, I do want to share this with you because pull this up. Because I'm working on something that I do want to show you guys. I'm making a list of all of these talking points here, I'll show you here and then I'll bring up the super chats. I'm making a list of these talking points and I'm working on a project because it's very important that people understand how to combat this. So I tweeted this and I said, what Zionist talking points have you heard the most? I'm working on a project about this. Let me know. And I've received a number of responses. Most of them are repetitive, right? So, but that's okay. I figured that would happen because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put this all together and I am going to create proper responses for those talking points. Because one of the things that I have noticed, and you guys can tell me if you've noticed this as well, I feel like we have to know how to effectively push back on those talking points. And one of the ways that you do that is by knowing the history. That's why I went through the history first thing of this show. 2, one of the most easiest pushbacks that you can give when Zionists say, if you're supporting the Palestinian people, you're anti-Semitic, is this: Palestinians are Semites. And I've watched a number of debates that have happened. And I've seen people like for Israel saying, oh, you're anti-Semitic, that kind of thing. And nobody is pushing back with that phrase that Palestinians are Semites. That is one of the most powerful phrases that you can use, because under the definition of Semites, that includes people who are Arab speaking people. That includes Palestinian people. Semites are not just people who are Jewish. So you have to know how to push back on these talking points. And that is how you begin to destroy the Zionist narrative. But if you don't know how to push back on it, this will continue to be an issue. But that's one of the things that all of us can do, right?